We're back as we look at Dooms of Dimension, and it's time to look at one of the next strategies of Justice Hunters that is getting support, as today we look at Dracotail and talk about if the support will make it even better, as we will talk about the strong cards that it is getting out of Dooms of Dimension, and showcasing what it will do and does it make Dracotail even better, as of the time of recording and the debut of Dracotail in the TCG. This deck has performed, I believe, a lot better than what people were expecting it to do, and has definitely been showing itself its path into the metagame and showing that it can stand on its own two legs next to the other decks in Justice Hunters. So we will be diving into it, as we're going to start off as only 2 cards have been given to the archetype in Dooms of Dimension, as well as the other Justice Hunter strategies. However, it's not about the quantity of cards you get, it's about the quality, and we're going to be talking about them right now as we both look at Dracotail Frixel and Dracotail Sting. As we jump into starting off with Frixel, Frixel is the brand new Spellcaster level 2 monster they will be receiving, as it is a light monster as well, and it is, like I said, a Spellcaster to go with the others in the archetype. Additionally, for its effect that if Frixel is normal or special summoned, you can target one Dracotail monster in your graveyard except Dracotail Frixel, so besides itself, and you get to special summon it. Then you return one monster you control to the hand. If this card is sent to the graveyard as material for a fusion summon, you can set one Dracotail spell/trap from your deck. You can only only use each effect of Dracotail Frixel once per turn. So very solid. Now let's get some of the elephants out of the room and out of the way. Frixel finally finishes the playset, in theory, or the 3 of the Spellcaster monsters, being the 3rd one, as now we have various effects between the Spellcasters, Lucius obviously being a search, Fimina being the fusion, and Frixel basically and essentially being a monster reborn. So very cool. But what does Frixel actually offer to the archetype to make the deck even better, as I've already mentioned? Well, what Frixel does is a bit different than what you're expecting, as now Frixel adds a pretty interesting layer to the archetype ability and its ability to kind of go high. So one of the things that Frixel can really do is it allows you to fetch different cards from your graveyard, and the reason this is important is that cards like Fimina, for instance, that can be retrieved from the graveyard. If you have no way to retrieve them already, you bring it from the graveyard, and then with Frixel's effect, you return one monster to the hand, being itself or the monster you summoned. So this is good to get Fimina back in hand for fusion summons. However, something like Mululu, for instance, is a really great one to talk about, because with Mululu and to an extent Lucius, these cards can be brought out from the graveyard, and then by returning Frixel to the hand, with Lucius you could get its effect off to search, or with Mululu it's now available to fusion summon. So by putting the Frixel back into your hand, you now have access to this fusion summon effect from the Mululu, giving you the ability to continue your plays, while also set up interactions for the following turn if you so choose. Additionally, Frixel also works very well in the grind game, which is something I do believe that the Dracotail deck does pretty well, but even more so now, because Frixel's ability to summon back any Dracotail monster, this does allow you to grab back Grammel and even Altharion, as these monsters can be brought back without actually having to use their effects to special summon themselves, and this is important because these cards can be returned to the extra deck by having the effect of Frixel to return them to the hand, and it does allow you the ability to reset up your fusion monsters, as you do burn through these pretty quick. And it's really cool to see that there is another way to basically allow you to play one Grammel if you really wanted to, because now you can just simply revive it with Frixel, and or vice versa. We have this ability to keep the extension going by having Frixel allow you to bring them out. So it's just very good, and it can set you up for OTK plays if you need going into past future turns, as Altharion coming out of the graveyard at 3k is no laughing matter. Now, combining this together with something like Rahu is actually very important, because Frixel Fix is the Rahu combo starting off going first. Now, what I mean by this is that you'll obviously have to have a monster, but the point is, with Rahu in rotation with any monster, this will get you into Frixel if you really want to do the full combo with Frixel, or just get Frixel into rotation, because Rahu is such a strong card. As long as you have any Dracotail monster to use, this effect gets really strong. Now, what you can do effectively with something like a Nergula, which I'll use as an example, is get you into this full board setup that we're looking for, being that Rahu with a Nergula, or it could be some other monsters, so it could be a blank, can get you into something about this type of setup, being able to get you double trap very easy, Fimina in rotation, and then obviously still having Grimmel and having Altharion in rotation as well. The reason I used this specific combination is that although Frixel is not here, Frixel is used in this combo to allow you to gain access back to your Fimina, as it would be the normal summon you would use off of K2 to get the Fimina that you would have used in the Rahu fusion back onto the field, and then get the Fimina back into your hand with Frixel's effect, giving you the ability to get that poly set up. And with obviously Altharion being in rotation, this means that you could have added the Urgula back to your hand after using Rahu, and then immediately going for Fimina then to then go ahead and get you access to your Grimmel, and then vice versa, doing the same thing you do with Urgula, use Urgula's effect, target the Fimina, put itself on the bottom of the deck, and then get Fimina back to your hand. So you get full rotation setup, but also the ability to use the most minimal amount of materials, which is kind of the point of this, is that with the access to Frixel, you don't actually have to step in and find access to another monster. You are able to kind of use just 3 monsters in this full combo without, if you don't get interrupted, to cycle through and get this board presence that you like. I think it's really cool, and it is very good in terms of just being able to keep this deck's combos very symmetrical, so it all goes in the corner in a sense, like it goes in a triangle or like a circle, which you want to do. But ultimately, the final part on Frixel is simple. Frixel is simply great, and there's nothing more to really be said, because Frixel does help out a lot. Like I said, unlike most decks, because this is a fusion strategy, it's really hard to linearly explain kind of how it works, because everything takes usually 2 cards or something about that line. But Frixel is just a very good extension piece, but also does allow you to access a lot more of your deck. But now it's time, as we talk about it, it is time to Sting. As we go into Dracotail, Sting, the new trap card for the Dracotail archetype out of Doom's Dimension. This one, I do believe, is one of the most interesting cards released, because now the Dracotail archetype is packing a lot of heat with its trap cards. Now we're going to be getting into it, as obviously it covers Mulu, as the other 2 traps cover the other in-theme dragons of the archetype. So starting off with Sting, what Sting allows you to do is you target 1 monster and or 1 spell/trap in your opponent's graveyard as cost, and then you get to banish them. And then you can use the normal effect that allows you to place 1 Dracotail card from your graveyard or banishment on the bottom of the deck, except Dracotail Sting. Then you get to draw 1 card. You can only activate 1 Dracotail Sting per turn. So starting off, main thing clearly, let's talk about it. Sting is now in rotation, so we have 3 traps that actually have very good effects. Now, one of the things that allows Dracotail to get really powerful with Sting's inclusion is that one of the elements that was missing from these trap lineups or interaction lineups is the fact that they didn't really have a way to deal with things in the grave, because you had to kind of rely on your out of engine for that, your hand traps. Having access to Sting is important because of this ability to, just banish the cards out of the graveyard. This allows Sting to do something very important, because, say for instance, that I think the way this is supposed to work is that Flame and Horn usually work somewhat in tandem with one another, because you hit a spell, that spell gets negated, it goes to the grave. You hit Horn, that monster gets bounced back whatever you choose, yours or your opponent's. So there is some give and take with these effects that made sense. It's like, oh, you're going to bounce this, you're going to negate that. Okay. And then these cards allow you to grab more cards. What Sting does is Sting specifically allows you to take advantage of the other traps, in the sense that you would never really want to lead with Sting if you don't have to. And the reason why I say you wouldn't want to lead with it is that if you lead with Sting, you're not getting full value because you really want to hit 2 cards. So if your opponent, for whatever reason, gets hit with Flame first, if you go Flame and Sting, which I think is going to become a combination you'll see a lot, is because that most decks already put monsters in the grave. So if a monster's already in the grave, Sting allows you to deal with now basically a free banish of a spell, but at the same time hitting that monster that could be key to your opponent's strategy. Like, I think Sting is really important because against anything K9 related, I do believe Sting is a very good card against K9, because now the graveyard, which is usually something you want to have set up in K9, does now seem like a big target on its back if Sting is in rotation, because this card will go after a monster, but also can go after any spells and traps you want. So like I talked about with Pure Canine, this could be annoying because your liberation cards can be targeted down with the Sting to get banished. And additionally, with other cards in other decks, there are some cards you want to retrieve, and you don't want to have your opponent actually deal with them and get rid of them. So you do have to worry about Sting now banishing them off out of the graveyard. And the ability to obviously draw one card is important because, you know, with a fusion archetype like this, all three of the traps are meant to do their effects cycle so you can get more materials, possibly allowing you to use Femina on your opponent's turn. But I do also want to mention the fact that getting hit with all three of these, if they are in rotation, is extremely painful because although Flame is the only technical negate among them, the bounce and the banish is very difficult for most modern decks because this covers basically every area of interaction on the field, a spell, and then obviously horns monsters, and then obviously with Sting, you're talking about monsters and spells, but in the graveyard. So like I said, this is very hard because you never obviously want to bring Lancia against a Dracotail player. I think that'd be kind of weird, but you know, Sting can be very painful. And to finish off with talking about Sting and one of its best interactions, I think, is the fact that now with a third trap into rotation, you now have the ability to recycle a bit easier because we do know that usually the combo is Flame and Horn, recycling one after another by putting them back on the bottom and allowing you to draw a card. Having Sting in rotation is really good because now if your opponent does Ash the trap after it has tried to reset the other one to the bottom of the deck, Sting can now be the backup trap you have to allow you to get that rotation back online, to get those traps back under the deck and keep the same like track going with your monsters. But additionally, having the third trap is important because now if you have both in rotation, you can obviously put a monster back and then have the other trap put the trap back and then keep the cycle going. I think it's just a really fantastic way of doing it, and ultimately Sting is going to be a very good card going into the metagame when it arrives because this card just offers Dracotail a lot more interaction than it already has access to, and it puts the opponent in a really awkward position because Dracotail can win the game over turns if it really wants to, as these traps are very impactful to holding down the fort against your opponent, but also gives you the ability to interrupt your opponent and really put them on the back burner. But guys, these are the cards out of Doom's Dimension. I did want to talk about these two because I think that talking about the future support for Dracotail is important because I do think this deck is being very much analyzed properly in the TCG right now. I think after its showcase at Vancouver, because I think only one player made into the top 8 with it. It could be Jesse Khan. I could be wrong because I think I saw a video about it. But if that is the case, then it showcases that high-level players can take this deck really far. But additionally, I think this deck has been popping up everywhere on regional circuits and has been showcasing its strength. I do think people were not prepared for this deck as much as they could for the others. So I will have a video talking about how, specifically Dracotail itself was able to sneak into the metagame and really stand forward. But like I said, that's all I've got for you guys today. Let me know down below in the comments what you think about these cards. Tell me how you feel about Dracotail going into Justice Hunters and then eventually into Doom's Dimension and the format going forward. But this has been Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.